now we're talking tariffs, Ukraine, and deportation. Let's bring in our political panel. Jennifer Kelly is a former spokeswoman for the California Republican Party and the host of All American Radio. And April Chapman is Project 21 ambassador and the host of the Standard of Truth podcast. Good morning, ladies. Great to have you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, April, jumping right in with tariffs. President Trump saying China tariffs will, quote, come down substantially if two countries can make a deal. He could be hinting at a possible deal to reverse the levies on China that now sit at 145%. And of course, the markets like it. The Dow futures up over 700 points this morning. What do you make of all this and where we stand now with this trade deal with China?
Honestly, I believe that Trump is just doing what any smart businessman would do. He's reading the room. He understands that this trade deal is absolutely necessary. China has not been paying their fair share. And while our markets are volatile, and this does make people very, very nervous, I applaud President Trump's bravery. We needed to get this done. We've had too many presidents in prior administrations just unwilling to play hardball and make China recognize that this is absolutely unfair. And if you want to do business with our country, you need to have some sort of equitable trade or reciprocal trade relationship with America. Overall, it's going to pinch and it's going to hurt a little bit up front, but I do have great confidence that the Chinese leader is going to come to the table and he's going to come to an agreement because he needs America in order for his economy to thrive.
You know, Jennifer, it's almost like if I were to put this into stages, it's almost like we're going into stage 3. And I think that's the final stage. The initial stage is to actually let the world know it's not going to be business as usual. And it's going to be a lot of tariffs with a hyper focus on Canada, let's say the EU and China. And then there's phase 2, back and forth in terms of escalation with regard to the percentage. And now it seems like it's moving into phase 3, where both sides are at the table, so there's no need for hardcore rhetoric anymore. Why? Because talks have begun. And the thing is, it seems like they'll actually reach a deal well before the 90-day pause expires. What say you?
I agree, John. Look, this has been like watching a real-life version of the art of the deal happening, right? We've all been watching it in real time. And it's interesting. I've been listening to the Art of the Deal on Audible just to, get to learn Donald Trump through some of these negotiations. And it's interesting. He really hasn't changed in terms of his negotiation tactics in 30 years. He, in fact, in the Art of the Deal, he says, sometimes I like to throw everything at the wall out there and see how everyone reacts. And I think that's what he's done here. He now has 120 nations saying, hey, we'll go to zero tariffs with you. And who's the one person left out? Well, it's President Xi there in China. So just a brilliant move, really. Yes, do we have to go through some short-term pain in the stock market to get there? Yes. But the majority of Americans who were concerned about that, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll last month, said that they were willing to go through some short-term pain for some long-term gain so that their kids would have a generation where there was more fair trade in the world. And I think that's a pretty good day at the office.
The deal is the outcome, the results, but the first 2 words are very much impactful. The art. And he has a unique art form, and it's actually surrounds a complete different strategy than the routine negotiation, and it's playing out in front of the entire world.
That's right. And to your point, Jennifer, I think more people are engaged in what the administration is saying now, so more than ever, because every word that Donald Trump says that moves markets, similar to Scott Besson and Caroline Levitt. People are finally tuning in to what's actually going on in the way in which the United States has been ripped off, to use Donald Trump's words, more than ever. And it's finally time to create this realignment where the United States is the #1 player, which we have not been especially under the previous administration, where we were literally compromised by the CCP. April.
Absolutely, I agree. I affirm that Donald Trump will oftentimes use hyperbole. He'll say things like the other panelists said, just to see what's going to stick. And that is an incredible superpower. He's incredibly influential in the way that when he speaks, whether he's being hyperbolic or he's serious, people are waking up and they pay attention. Now, this can get a little scary because a lot of times Trump is he plays this game where he'll say something such as, oh, I'm going to fire the head of the Treasury, knowing he doesn't really actually have the ability to do that. But what it does do is it makes leftists lose their mind because they hang on to his every word. And when he says something, they take it to the bank. And it looks like it's a game of this manipulation game that he plays with them. And I think he rather enjoys that a lot.
The reason why I chuckle, because it reminds me of when he was running the first time, and he said, I could walk out onto Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't miss a vote. And then that drove the liberals completely mad. Oh, Donald Trump is advocating violence. No, he's just actually finding unique words, using humor to connect with people, and people are calling this a trade war. It's not a trade war. It's a trade battle, right? It's not a war. But let's move on to a real war, the war in Ukraine. All eyes on Kyiv as the world waits for a response to President Trump's final offer to end the years-long conflict. The proposal includes recognizing Crimea as part of Russia and unofficially acknowledging Russia's control over almost all territories occupied since the war started. Now, here's what Russian President Putin had to say about the ceasefire.
Мы к перемирию всегда относимся положительно, поэтому и выступили с такой инициативой. Мы всегда об этом говорили, о том, что мы относимся к любым мирным инициативам положительно. Надеемся, что также к этому будут относиться и представители киевского режима. Хотя мы
Now, Jennifer, the thing is that we already know with regard to the trade battle, China is actually suffering internally, so they need to come to the table. But, Russia's also suffering. Their economy, its economy, is not doing very well. This war has been going on for over 3 years. So Putin wants a deal, and I think this final offer is a fair one. So how long do you think it'll take to get this done?
I think this will happen actually pretty quickly. And the person really to blame for such harsh terms by Russia is none other than Vladimir Zelensky, who trotted into the Oval Office in Trump's first 100 days and acted like an arrogant child, a petulant child. So, if his country, Ukraine, is upset about any of the terms of the deals, they should look no further than his visit to the Oval Office. He showed up underdressed and not prepared. Donald Trump told him to come back wearing a suit, and he did not. And he also, remember, they had that big outburst in the Oval Office, and that was at the hands of Zelensky, because I believe he was playing more for the cameras than he was trying to negotiate a deal. Look, Donald Trump has shown, I think, and this is important to voters, especially women voters in the suburbs, he has shown that he's a caring person about this. Donald Trump has said out loud, so many people are dying. What are you doing? Like, this is a very serious situation. So I thought that Oval Office meeting was very compelling there with Donald Trump. So look, if anyone's unhappy about the terms, they have no one to blame but the Ukrainian leader.
Right. President Trump doesn't like war, but he didn't actually say this, but this is his intention in terms of, let's get this deal done, praise the Lord, and pass the minerals.
Well, April, finally President Trump criticizing the courts for getting in the way of his border and immigration agendas. The president adding he hopes to get full cooperation to fulfill a key campaign promise to rid the country of what he calls very bad people. We know he has already been doing an incredible job with respect to the deportations, over 665% spike in arrests of terrorists since Joe Biden was in office, which is really just incredible to think that could occur. But your thoughts on the immigration process playing out and the courts really putting a wrench in what President Trump is trying to do here?
It's unfortunate that the courts are not prioritizing the Americans, the safety of all Americans. And it's also very disheartening that the DC Democrats have prioritized these foreign optics over American security. I'd like to ask, if they only showed as much compassion for the Texan ranchers or the Arizona families and the border control agents who've been drowning in this chaos that they refuse to acknowledge for a really long time. I think it's important to note that Trump is working hard to secure America. Many of us have felt unsafe for a very long time. And I do think this is a situation where we have this healthy balance between trying to maintain the rule of law, also making sure that our judicial system holds the executive branch accountable. But we need to be asking, like, how did we get here? We got here because the last administration that I fundamentally believes hates America opened up the borders, allowed this many people to come in, and they knew that they would be able to tie this up in the legal process and prevent these people from being able to go back, because
Gotcha.
now individuals have to go in front of a judge, even though they're here legally and they already broke the law. They are trying to jam up the court system, and while they do that, they can funnel all of these individuals to these sanctuary cities, overload a lot of their electoral
we got to come to an
so
end,
that they can ultimately.
but I want to give Jennifer 10 seconds to respond, so that way we can close this segment. Great commentary, Jennifer.
Yeah, the judicial activism here is very concerning, and I think it has surprised even President Trump. Look, if the Supreme Court wants to give court trials to every single illegal migrant who came here during the Biden administration, we're going to have 10.2 million court trials. That is outrageous.
Exactly.
It's unsustainable and not possible.
Exactly. Jennifer Kelly, April Chapman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.